Hello and welcome back to the For the Property Investor podcast. And today we've got another buyer's agent with us, someone who I've known for quite a while on and off, but we've randomly met through the industry a number of times over the last 20 years. So that makes me feel very old. But today we have Valerie Davis. Hello and welcome.
Thank you. Hi, Owen. How are you going? Long
Yeah,
time no see.
Yes, I know. And I do have to say, no relation, but because you do have a fantastic last name. So, yes, no relation. But Valeria, it's great having you on the podcast today to talk all things
Thank
property
you. Thank you for having me.
property investment. And tell us a bit about what you do now, but also how you started in the industry.
Right. Okay. I started in the industry in my 20s to begin with. I was at Ray White. And I remember back in those days, we're talking 30 years ago, back in those days, there wasn't a lot of training. You were just given um, a bunch of tools and told to go out there and go and get some listings. And I remember my boss, Danny, saying to me the very first day, right, so I want you to go out, get an auction signed up. I'd like you to get some marketing funds, and I'd like you to get, I want you to go out to this listing presentation by yourself and come back with them signed up. And I went, okay, not really understanding what I was getting myself into. Came back with the listing signed up with an auction agreement and with marketing funds. And he went, how did you do that? And I said, well, that's what you told me to do.
Yeah.
So, sometimes having not a clue what you're doing works for you, but obviously it doesn't really work that way. I was just lucky and passionate. I think that's what comes across, that I was passionate.
Very good.
And that was the beginning of my career. I worked there for a few years before moving out of real estate for a short time, and then coming back again into real estate when my kids were little. So out in the Kenthurst Dural area, so I had my own agency selling rural properties.
Okay. And for all the listeners' sake, that's it. That's in the sort of semi-rural northwest region of Sydney. So
yes.
Yes.
Which is only probably these days 30 minutes on the highway, 30 minutes from Sydney Central. Yeah. So beautiful part of the world.
It is. I'd very much love to be back in that area myself. But
so now I'm a buyer's agent.
Yep.
So I converted from being a selling agent. I found that I naturally gravitated towards the buyers only if I couldn't find a buyer a property and I could see that they were ready to go, they were cashed up, or they were they had their money in place. I tended to then look outside of my listings and see if I could find them a property. I'd approach other agents. I worked very well with other agents in the area and would ring them up and say, hey, do you have a property? I've got someone who needs X, Y, Z. And I would inevitably find those buyers a property either through a conjunction with that other agent, or even just refer them onto the agent. There was no such thing as a buyer's agent back in those days.
No.
And so when I came back into the industry this time, I was like, I'm not going to be a selling agent. I want to help the buyers. Hence, House Hunters is my company name, and where that came from.
Fantastic. And so you've been doing that for a couple of years now, and
post-COVID.
Yeah, and you're based in the Sydney eastern suburbs.
My office is in Potts Point.
Yeah.
I'm quite familiar with the eastern suburbs, the lower North Shore, which I've spent the last 25 years in the lower North Shore. 20 years, sorry, in that Mossman, Cremorne Point, Neutral Bay area. and now the east. So using my experience with property and the locations is where I'm concentrating in. But I've been doing some work in Newcastle as well recently, in that Lake
Okay.
Macquarie area, as well as the hills, which is where I'm from, and also the Sutherland Shire too now. So basically, it doesn't take long to become an expert with the tools that we have in the industry, as you know.
Yes, of
Yeah.
course. And in a lot of those clients that you're helping, they're owner occupiers as well as investors.
Yeah, they are. So a lot of upsizes and downsizes, and with the downsizing, people are finding that they've got extra cash that they can either put into shares or they can buy a second property. Airbnb properties are pretty, people are asking me, can they have like a secondary property that they can Airbnb when they're not there? So that city country thing is still happening. Remember the exodus that we had with COVID, where people
Oh,
were
yes.
pulling up and then moving into, the doing a tree change or a sea change.
Mm.
Well, now they're combining the two a lot. So keeping their city place, which is usually smaller, I guess, a city place, and then moving out to the northern beaches or even up to the Central Coast or up to Newcastle, and having that dual lifestyle. So, and that's exciting. That's really fun.
Very good. It seems like you're enjoying the new role in the industry.
I am. Yes.
Yeah, good to see. Good to see. And with property investors, so you said you help property investors, and that's what we're all about here on this podcast.
Yes.
And what are you seeing at the moment with investors that you're talking to, and whereabouts are they buying, and for what reasons are they looking to buy?
Okay, so the market that I deal mostly with is that sort of downsizers market, or the investors coming in from overseas or interstate who are
Okay.
still looking for their return on their investment. So they're looking for, obviously in Sydney, 3% is the average. So they're looking to, that 4.5 to 6%. I'm doing a lot of commercial stuff as well now,
Right.
which you can get that 6 and 7%,
Yeah.
especially like that Central Coast, Newcastle sort of area.
Yeah.
Um, so you still can get those sort of returns there. But those clients that I have that are solely seeking for Sydney, they know they're not going to get the 6 and 7 and 8%. And they know they're not going to get that. They want a mixture of return on their investment, rental return, and capital gain. I've seen amazing capital gains in the Sydney market. People buying an apartment for a couple of million, or $1 million, doing some renovations, and all of a sudden it's made 20%. So and think, I think in the areas that I predominantly work in, and make that capital gain. People don't want to do the renovations. Building costs are quite high, so they want something already done up, and they're prepared psychologically to pay more.
Mm.
It's incredible how much people are paying for a property that's been done up versus one that needs work.
Yes,
Um,
well, because of the lack of trades and the cost of renovating as well. Yes, we've seen that as well, where a lot of people just prefer to pay that premium for finished properties, and the ones that need a bit of TLC, as they say, are really struggling. But it's and when it comes to houses versus units. There's been a lot of talk in the market about, especially in Sydney, that because of interest rates and people are still looking at being able to buy property, but houses have had such a good run versus units that now it might look like it's the time for units to have their run. Are you seeing that?
Well, I guess it comes down to the client's budget,
Yeah.
firstly. And what I look at is, what is your budget and what is it that you want to get out of that particular budget? I will always try and talk someone into a house over a unit. For strata is getting really expensive. Just not having that control that you would have in a house. So I would always try and, depending on budget and area that they want to be in, I would always try and get them the house over the unit. However, people are constrained by their budget, and units are, what happens is that the housing market goes like this, and then the unit market does a catch up.
Yeah.
So depending on where that stage is, I think we are almost at that catch up stage.
Okay.
Where units have now gone up. I remember 2 years ago, units was so lagging, and I was like, right, I can't believe you can get a 2-bedroom unit with views of the harbour still for under $1 million. Now you can't. So,
Okay.
so I think it's done that little bit of a catch up, and it's the same with city versus regional, whether it's houses or units. City, then regional, and then and then that happens. So regional goes back to its place, and it's the same with units as well. You've got houses, and then units do that.
Yep.
And then they do that.
Yeah.
And I think that's where we're at now, where they're kind of like finding their place. So from an investor's perspective, it's a hard question to answer, Owen, because it does depend on the client's whole portfolio, where they're at, how much money they've got, do they want to live in this property eventually, where if they're never going to live in that property and it's purely an investment, well, then it's just numbers.
Yeah.
And I would still always go for land. But then you've got these people who don't want to pay land tax, so they opt for the unit. So I've got to get into the psychology of the investor, and that's what I'm good at. I'm good at finding out who my client is and giving them what I know that they want long term.
Okay. And
yeah, did that answer your question?
Yeah. No, it did, because I called it about 3 years ago as well, in terms of units versus houses in Sydney, where because there was that exodus during the especially in the first year or two of COVID outside of Sydney. Yeah, houses in the burbs and out in the regional areas were just exploding, whereas units actually had a reduction in price. And you could just see it, that as soon as everyone started coming back to work and coming back to the city, units were just going to explode, and they were really underpriced in comparison. So yeah, it was interesting and that's why I wanted to ask the question, to be able to see what's happening on the ground now from your experience, to see where it's at. So no, it's good to hear that it's had a bit of a run. As usual, the media are coming to the party a bit late. It's usually the way. As soon as it's in the media that it's happening, it's usually already happened 6 months ago.
Yeah, well, look at like the Southern Highlands of New South Wales, and look at Byron Bay, Mollymook, that southern area. Sorry that I'm always talking about New South Wales, but
that's all
where
right.
I am.
Yeah, that's where you are.
So you look at those areas, they sort of inflated, the prices inflated ridiculously. Like they've gone up like 30, 40, 50% in some areas, but then they've come down 20%, 25%, particularly like Byron Bay, Mollymook, Southern Highlands. They've come down in price. It's a classic supply and demand. The demand's come down, and there's always that correction. So this is what I feel every single day in the marketplace. I can feel the market going up and down, and that's that's really important for investors to understand that you've got to time the market. No matter what you're buying, I think that's the crux of it. You've got to time the market, whether it's houses, whether it's units, whether it's city, whether it's country, whether it's regional, whether it's and it depends on what they're after.
And so, and also residential versus commercial.
Yes.
You mentioned a couple of times that you're looking at been looking at commercial properties for clients.
Especially around that Newcastle Central Coast area that I've been looking at, great returns and not a lot of demand. So prices are some really good bargains.
Right. Okay. And is that
I wish I had money because I would buy.
And is that from a rental return point of view? And what type of commercial property?
Both.
Yeah.
Both.
And are they more factory units or office?
So the one that I looked at just on the weekend, which I think is amazing, it's right in the middle of Newcastle. It's like an older sort of Federation looking building with 2 apartments and retail downstairs. And it's probably only returning about 5%, but it's been on the market for a little while. So if you get that at the right price, and I've been trying to negotiate this for a client, if you can get that at the right price at that 6%, it's a really, really good return because you've got the 2 apartments, 2 4-bedroom apartments, and the retail's not going anywhere. It's a really good deal. But this is just one of many. It's one. I want to win lotto so I can buy all of these because it's just amazing seeing all these properties and you just go, I need an investor.
It sounds like you might need to put your prices up, helping all these investors.
Prices?
Yeah, your prices, so that you can buy one for yourself. And but it sounds like you're doing great work for all of your clients. So
thank you.
Yeah, no, it's all right. Yeah, because we find that a lot of our clients are looking at commercial properties as possibilities to be able to invest in. But it's always getting the, what type do I buy into? And it's so certainly the rise of the buyer's agent and a lot more getting into commercial property, I think is a great thing for the property investor. So yeah.
If you can stay away from strata on commercial, that's better. Yeah. That's my big tip there. If you've got control over land and building, it is much, much better from a long-term investment strategy. Yeah. Okay,
cool. Well, Valeria, we might leave it there. It was great to have you on. And if anyone wanted to reach out to you, you mentioned your business name briefly before, but please give it a plug.
Oh, okay. So House Hunters, you can find me at househunters.com.au. That's probably the easiest way to remember where to find me. House Hunters, the famous American show, I'm not affiliated with it, but we're House Hunters in Australia, househunters.com.au.
Fantastic. Well, great having you on, and it was great to catch up as well. And yes, if anyone wants to reach out to Valeria, please do. And we'll see you again next time, whether you're listening or watching. We'll see you again soon. Thanks.
Thanks, Owen.